Let's bring in our good buddy, Aaron Boone. And, Aaron, we're going to start off with a quasi-baseball question to you. A lot of controversy here in New York. Matt Harvey with a picture. He's flipping the bird. The Mets made him take it down. He quits Twitter. A lot of people are saying they have no right to do that. I say, and Don says, you represent an organization. They have the right to ask you to take it down. What's your take?
I think they have the right to ask you to take it down, and you can respond accordingly. This looks like an unfortunate situation going on in the relationship, obviously, between Matt Harvey and the Mets. Obviously, what he means to that organization going forward. Hearing about him wanting to come back at the end of the year, you can understand the Mets wanting to, have some sense of control over his rehab process and doing everything they can to get him back on the field healthy 100% by next year, because a lot of their plan falls into him leading a potential rotation now that I think Met fans can kind of finally see the light at the end of the tunnel that, hey, better days are on the horizon right now, and we have the makings of what could be a very good pitching staff very soon here, and Matt Harvey's an important part of that.
Even let's say he doesn't like the Mets, maybe didn't like how he was treated. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Do you have to have a love for your organization when you're going out there and playing for them?
No, I prefer it though. I want my guy and one of my core guys and one of my guys that I'm counting on to be a cornerstone of my franchise, that hopefully the relationship between he and the organization is one of reverence. Even though there may be times where you have your battles with them, obviously in contract situations, but you hope that there's a reverence there between your best players and the organization.
Let's shift gears here for a moment, Aaron. Tonight at Fenway Park, where I am, it's the Yankees against the Red Sox, and I said earlier in the show that because of the injury to Nova, which is a big loss for the Yankees,
big loss.
Now Tanaka has to be not just good, not have that that time to just get acclimated. And I think he's shown so far he's been outstanding. But now this is another test at Fenway Park against the Red Sox. Do you believe, and we had Cece on earlier who said everybody has to step up now. Do you believe that?
I do. I think the Nova loss, I don't know if it's gotten enough attention. I think it's a huge loss. I mean, you saw what he did last year. It looked like he finally turned the corner from a career standpoint. And I think the Yankees, and rightfully so, were counting on him to be a big-time contributor this year. And losing him, I think, just because he had a couple bad starts out of the gate, people don't maybe view it as a huge loss. But he was a big part of this team. Yes, everyone has to step up. And I think they have the ability with their rotation pieces, and I believe Tanaka is what we're seeing. I think he's an ace. I think he's going to be an all-star. I think he's going to be a dominant pitcher. I think we've already seen that. I think you're going to continue to see that. Now the question is, can they fill that void that Nova leaves in the rotation with Nuno getting the first opportunity, the first crack at it, if they have to go to a Phelps at some point, or are they going to have to go out of the organization at some point, which I'm sure from their standpoint they hope is more of a trade deadline situation.
What's Ellsbury going through tonight, returning to his old stomping grounds for the first time?
Man, it's got to be a lot. I would think a ton of emotions, a ton of thoughts. Obviously, what he's done there. Obviously, he understands the significance of these games, even these regular season games, Red Sox, Yankees. You understand as a player, it's a big deal. It feels important. It is important. And him going home for the first time, I'm sure wondering what the reaction will be. I'm sure he's very excited. I'm sure he's very anxious. I'm sure there'll be some nerves, and I'm sure he's, in the end, looking forward to getting past it and finding a little bit more normalcy within the season.
Do you see any rhyme or reason to why so many people, and now Nova is the latest, so many people having Tommy John surgery just from the start of the season, Aaron? What gives? I've read people say, well, cold weather. It's cold every April, and we haven't seen the proliferation of this kind of injury. What do you think's going on?
All I can think of is the training regimens that athletes are just, stronger and throwing overhand throwing is an unnatural motion, especially when you bring in breaking balls and all that into it. And now you're maximizing your frame from a physical standpoint, from a strength standpoint. And maybe that just isn't right with the ligaments. I don't know if you can attribute it to throwing too much, not throwing repeatedly throughout the year, not throwing enough. Obviously, no one has the answers right now. A lot of theories out there, a lot of opinions on it. But it feels like a big issue right now in Major League Baseball that so many guys are going down.
Can you, as a general manager now, try to make sure that you have multiple guys in the bullpen that have a history of starting games for you?
I think it goes into the process now, and I think it's got to go into the plan of building your team each and every offseason, knowing that, hey, I've got to have 1, 2, 3 extra starters in the organization, whether it be depth at the AAA level, depth within your bullpen that can move in. I think it's absolutely something that GMs, I think, have been considering for a long time. I mean, the old adage, you can never have enough pitching, rings true, but I think more so than ever, these GMs have to be cognizant of creating depth within a rotation, and that's oftentimes perhaps just as important as getting that one guy that you're going to spend big on, is having 3 or 4 guys at the back end that can fill in on a championship level.
You know, we had a big fight between the Pirates and the Brewers where Carlos Gomez stood and watched the ball, and it hit off the wall, and he had a hustle for a triple, and then Garrett Cole said what he said, and there was a brawl. Are we just too cool for school now? Is there any way you could say that you've got to run out of the box no matter what, or are just players so programmed that they're going to sit there and watch any long fly ball?
I had no issue with anything the other night, from Gomez to Cole to the benches clearing. You know, I chalk it up to a kind of boys will be boys, and I didn't think Gomez's thing was that egregious. I felt like that's kind of his dismount. He kind of flips the bat when he gets into a ball pretty well. I thought he was jogging out of the box. He ended up getting a triple. It's not necessarily my style, but I don't have a big issue with what Carlos Gomez do. I don't view it as he stood there and watched it. I viewed it as he hit a ball good. He flips the bat a lot when he does hit a ball good, and then he went into the jog, and I thought he thought the guy was going to catch it and was jogging. And then, as you'll see many times, when a guy hits a straight double or a straight triple, they'll kind of roll into that top speed. And not necessarily my style, but I don't have a huge issue with it.
Well, where he loses me, though, after the altercation with the Braves last year, he apologized. He said he was going to stop, and then he ends up doing it again.
But I don't know that he did it. I don't know that I don't think that's apples to apples. I don't think he's doing the same thing. I think he thought wrongly last year that the Atlanta Braves were throwing at him, and he wasn't the only one. He thought he saw something on video that would suggest that they were plunking him. They, I think, later brought that attention, and in that situation, he apologized. He stood up to McCann and said, I was in the wrong here, and I think these are apples and oranges.
And one final thing then, Aaron. Is the horse out of the barn? Can we never expect any more to people to run hard to first and just run hard all the time? I mean, one of the greatest players I ever saw, Robinson Cano, did not run hard to first base. Alfonso Soriano, when he hits a fly ball, doesn't run. I mean, it's just a horse out of the barn. There's no way that everybody's going to run hard all the time?
I think everybody, no. But there's still reason to believe that hopefully most guys will, and hopefully but the reality is you're going to see some guys not do it. And I don't, it's not always a gauge for me that this guy plays hard because he runs hard to first base. It's kind of easy to see and an easy one to pick out, but I don't think that defines in my head. And you're talking to a guy who ran hard all the time, but in my head, that's not my judge of, that guy's a gamer, that guy plays hard, that guy whatever. I think it's on the surface something that's easy to pick on. And yes, I would love to have everyone run out balls all the time. Don't get me wrong, but I think we overplay I think we overdo it sometimes as defining somebody. He plays hard, he doesn't, by running out a fly ball.
Good stuff, Aaron. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, guys. Thanks.